Hi, and welcome to another inspiring artist worth studying. Today I am going to be talking about Kohei Horikoshi. Hi, my name is Luis Escobar. I'm a storyboard artist on the Simpsons television show. I've been working on the show for over 25 years now, and I'm here to empower you. So, Kohei Horikoshi is the artist who does the manga My Hero Academia, which I really enjoy. I'm a superhero nerd. I love DC Comics. I love reading Marvel Comics. I love just reading superhero comics as a genre. And I do like manga overall, but this one kind of hit my sweet spot because it's manga and it's deliberately superhero stuff. And it does something a little bit different with the genre that I really appreciate, on top of the fact that it's also very well written and fun to read and to watch if you watch the manga. One of the things that is interesting about Horikoshi's work is that even though it's a superhero manga, even though it's about superheroes, there's not as much heroes in tights, super buff heroes in tights as much as in the artwork that he tends to do as you'd think. I mean, in the manga, obviously there are, but there's a lot of characters walking around in, as it is a typical manga and anime, a lot of stuff happening in a school, in just regular school, hence the academia part, right? And the interesting thing about doing a story that has that sort of thing is that there's a lot of characters in regular clothes, and I find that drawing drapery is something very tricky. And so I'm going to be talking about Kohei Horikoshi's work, but I'm going to be pointing out specifically how he handles drapery, because there's so much of his work that has just regular clothes on, and so let's take a look at what he does and how he does it, and all the things that are worth looking at and studying from his work. Okay, so because I decided to talk about his work, I didn't actually choose any work that was actually straight from the manga. And the reason why is because there's a lot of artwork of his online that is just his regular pencil work. It's not the finished inked work. I'm not sure how he works, but in most of the time when you're talking about a manga artist, they have assistants. And by assistants, I mean there's people who tend to finish the work, like in American comics, there is the penciler, and then there's the inker, and then there's the colorist, etc. A lot of the time, the assistants, what they tend to do is sometimes they do the background, sometimes they do the ink. Not always, but sometimes. So I'm not sure exactly how his process works, if he has assistants, if what part of what is his, what part is just the assistants, how much of the zipatone is, all this other stuff. So it's always good to find pencil art of the artist so that you could actually just look at the raw art that the artist does. So let's take a look at this drawing here. We've got All Might and the other boys here from part of the class, and one of the things right off the bat is that Horikoshi's work is very expressive. There's a lot of personality and attitude in all the characters that he tends to draw. The difficult part that happens, especially when you're drawing people in a kind of a pin-up situation, is doing something interesting that highlights who they are. A lot of the time, especially even in superhero genres, they're just standing there like looking like this, sticking out their chests, and there isn't a whole lot of expression and character in that. It's just them standing, looking tough and excited. You know, this is superhero manga, but there's none of that. Like, you could have done All Might standing in a big heroic pose. He's actually not. He's just sitting there, kind of squatting between all the other kids, sitting there holding himself. It's a really interesting choice to make all these characters the way that they are here, and you kind of read who they are and what their personality is. So I wanted to point out how he's working with the drapery here. We've got these characters standing, and see how here the folds are bunching up right here on the shoulders, on the elbows, because that's where the actual turn is happening. That's where the crease is happening when he's got his hands in his pockets. So what we're actually getting is we're getting the impression that this is going away from us and this is coming toward us. And the way we get the idea that this arm is coming toward us is because these lines here are curved that way. So they're curved this way so that we can see it. They're not going the opposite way, right? Like too often I see beginning artists, they just randomly put lines here without thinking of the dimension of these forms. And then here on these two folds, they are still folding in the same direction, right? Giving us the impression that it's coming at us. And then this one is folding this way, slightly this way, so that we can get the impression that this is coming away. See? Same thing with this one. This is going away, and then once it's turning, it starts turning forward. These are zigzag folds. They're still coming toward. This is still giving us the perspective that we're looking down at these things, but it's not as important as these, because this is really important. Here we got these pinch folds pointing in this direction, because this is where the arms are pinching and folding up this shirt. Here we have these folds here. This is where they happen, but they're wrapping around here, so we can get the impression that these forms are coming toward us. Again, that's what's going on here. See the muscles here? They're all implying that and how these lines are going. It's exactly the same thing here. Even the values that he's adding here, they're all implying that they're coming toward us. See how the even on my shirt here, they're going wrapping around this way, and they're reinforcing the three-dimensionality of the drawing here. This is coming forward. He's coming forward. He's doing that, so like you can see that the drapery is coming across this way, right? And again, this is going away from us like that. He's doing this, and you can see that this is coming forward and toward us. And then this is just kind of wrapping around. And then we have these zigzag folds. They just kind of drop and flop down. The zigzag folds are just kind of when you have like a bunched up shirt and you have like a diaper fold. Diaper fold is something that hangs on a specific point and it just drops down, and then you have another one that drops down. That kind of creates a diaper fold, where this one's it's more like a tube fold, but because the tube fold is just on the one point, so my bad. So the one point, it comes down in the tube fold, and then when the tube fold hits something and it starts kind of like getting splayed out, it creates kind of a bit of a zigzag. And these are what's happening here. It's kind of, this is one line of a zigzag fold. So it's really important as artists to understand the dynamics and the physics of drapery and how it works, where it pinches, where it folds. But on top of that, when we're drawing something three-dimensional, when we're putting clothes on something, what we want to do is reinforce the dimension of the thing that the clothes is covering, in order to enhance the dimension of the drawing, so that it doesn't counteract or contradict the three-dimensionality that we are trying to convey. Again, here we have, this is a really pretty drawing here, because of the cross-hatching kind of makes this really dynamic and interesting. And actually you could even see that he's thinking about the dimension of this very cartoony face. Like, a lot of the time these kinds of manga drawings may seem to be very flat, and they seem to sometimes to a beginning artist to almost, they just kind of want to like put stickers for heads, for eyes, and stickers for a nose, and a sticker for a mouth, and the rest is just kind of like flat, because it does give the impression sometimes, for example here and here, where it just seems like it's just a flat graphic. But there is, if you're thinking about it correctly, a three-dimensional shape here that actually does have dimension, and when you add these values, it actually increases that notion. And here we actually have these lines here explaining the dimension that's going on. This is coming in, so where it's in shadow, and this is popping up further out, and then it's going back in. So we're getting these kinds of notions that there's values there. There's a plane of the body there. I actually also like the way that he draws hands. He tends to draw them fairly blocky, and part of the reason why that works so well is because hands are really difficult to draw, but when you make them much more blocky, they become much more dimensional, and they give much more of an impression of solidity, and drawing hands is an extremely complicated thing to do. But again, here we've got these characters, and all the drapery, because there's a lot of drapery here, is all there to enhance the dimension of the bodies that they're covering. So look at this. We know that it's slanted, it's coming at us because of the way that the drapery is explaining to us the dimension of this figure. See how this is wrapping around and coming around, and we have these kind of pinch folds coming up, and all of this is enhancing the direction, including, by the way, some of this shadow is going in the direction that we're meant to see these this drapery. Not all the shadows. This is just kind of cross hatching, and it's arbitrary, and it's just a kind of just a really quick. This is shadow shape, right? But some of it is conscious, and it is an attempt to kind of add a little bit of dimension with the shadow lines. And here is really interesting. I love this kind of shape here. This here, you can tell that it's like he literally drew a box or a wedge shape, right? Here we got the top of this, then we have the side here where, like in a box, it's in shadow. Then we have this front plane here, so we have the light coming in. We have a front plane here, a top plane here, a side plane here, and then this is all in shadow. And what that does when doing anatomy is it gives it that much more strength and dimension. And he's still thinking about it in the same way here, but because how the light is hitting, we only get like this whole full thing. The reason that there's a line here, this is what is called a cast shadow, and he made a hard line here. He actually drew a line, and this is what is called a hard shadow. A hard shadow is one that just directly stops. Like a cast shadow, when it's hit with direct light, we have a light here, and if it's hitting, and if you see my hand, see how it stops immediately, right? It doesn't have like a gradating. It doesn't like dissipate. It doesn't just kind of softly go away. Like if it was, for example, an overcast day, you'd get a very soft shadow. because it's not so hard. It's not such a hard, direct light. But if it was a bright, bright, bright day with the sun shining, full noon, and you're walking, you'll see the shadows are very sharp, while on an overcast day, the shadows are very soft. So depending on the type of light source and how hard it's hitting, you might get something like this hard line here. And that's one of the things that he's kind of implying here, that it's a hard line here. And then these lines here, when you see these kind of like little squiggly lines here, that means that there's a little bit more of a soft. That's it's a shorthand for soft lines, for soft edges. But this is just really great. And then there's like the radiating light here, which is really nice. But again, drapery is fantastic in this. Again, more drapery. See, like all of these things, they're wrapping around. Everybody's wearing just regular clothes. And one of the things that sells it, and one of the things that's very convincing about a drawing with characters wearing just regular clothes, is how well you're able to draw the drapery on the figures. Now this is meant to be kind of flat and graphic, and goofy, so it doesn't have to be completely three-dimensional. And this is a very stylized, very representational, goofy, cartoony thing here. So a lot of these characters are actually, in fact, not actually dimensional. They're actually like more like cardboard cutouts, and this is on purpose. One of the things I also wanted to point out is that, in spite of the fact that this is mostly characters in clothes, you still do need to know how anatomy works, especially if you're doing superheroes. And all of this anatomy is actually sound, and this is so you should learn your anatomy. You should learn your anatomy because sometimes you can't even see the anatomy, and you need to still know how it works, even though you're not actually drawing all the muscles. Again, this is a beautiful, beautiful drawing with the drapery. See how the drapery is enforcing the fact that this is coming back in space, and then it turns and it goes forward in space here. This, especially in a front pose, where, see, look how there's not a whole lot you can do, right? Except show that the drapery is going away, so that then we can come forward here. Beautiful, beautiful. And then you could also tell that she's kind of leaning back because of the way that the drapery is wrapping around this way, right? It's wrapping around across. It's not coming down this way because that would ruin the effect. It's coming around this way so that we could reinforce that this torso is going away from us. It's beautifully drawn. It's beautifully thought out. All the details need to be that way. You have to think about things like this. I picked this one because of the arm. Besides the fact that this dude's face is totally like awesome and designy, and look how graphic, just like the hair is just a graphic. It's not even like a dimensional anything. But I just wanted to point out that the anatomy here. And part of the anatomy here is we've got these biceps here, and then we've got the triceps here. We have the an indication of the brachialis, and then we have the brachioradialis muscle coming in and coming down and connecting down here somewhere, and then we have like the not somewhere, but like to the wrist. To the exterior of the wrist here, so like the brachioradialis comes in and it goes and it attaches to this side of the thumb. You should know this sort of stuff when you're drawing these, but notice it's not just like overdone. It's not just like a whole lot of muscles and stuff. This is just like an indication of the brachioradialis coming down here, and then the elbow. So that's the kind of thing that you want to be aware of when you're drawing these sort of things. Even when you're going to simplify it and it looks simple, it's actually very well thought out, and there's an understanding of these things when you're drawing this stuff. Too often, beginning artists who are enamored of manga and anime, they get so caught up in the style that they forget that there is actual and anatomical knowledge and dimension to the drawings that are being done. Because they look simple doesn't mean they are thoughtless. A lot of character here, and again, so here's a really interesting little cartoony, but at the same time anatomically sound hands. So it's interesting. They're holding their hands like this, but look at my hand and look at their hand, and you can understand what it is. See, like right here, these bits of my hand and the way that these shapes are being drawn. Here we have the phalanges of the fingers. Boom, one here, boom, right here, boom, right here. Then we have this phalange here, and then it goes down here, and then we have this kind of like muscle that looks like a drumstick, right? There's a drumstick kind of muscle right here, and then he kind of drew this drumstick for this thumb. And notice how there's a flat. See how this thumb just goes flat here, there, and then it's round on the top. There it is, flat and round at the top. But you're drawing all the phalanges, and then these fingers. It's a fun little design where you see how fat it gets around the middle part of the hand here. So you could exaggerate that little that fat bit, right? And then you can just kind of have it slowly taper to an end. This one doesn't taper. This one gets even wider, but this one tapers a little bit. This one tapers. This one tapers. This one tapers. But it's fat in the middle. So all of these things are sometimes kind of really quickly drawn, and at the same time sometimes very thoughtfully drawn. It is still done with the knowledge of the hand. Here we have these tight. These. See how the draper look. It's almost exactly the same. Like you got these lines here. That's what happens when you squish here. The tension gets pulled. Like the clothes gets pulled here. But from here, see, so up here is the anchor point, but then this is where it's getting pulled into and pinched. So these are the pinch points. And so what we got here is that here's the anchor point, and then we're just pointing to the pinch. Here's the anchor point, and then these are falling off of the anchor point, right, into this kind of neutral thing. So this is actually two folds. And that's kind of the way it's thought out. Again, this is wrapping around. So like this area, this is the anchor point, and then it gets pinched. It gets pinched here, and it wraps around, and but they're all pointing to the anchor points, which is this whole entire side of the body here. Again, this is the anchor point, this entire section here. So everything is coming off of here, but then when it pinches, it all points to the anchor. So it's this stuff is really important to think about when you're drawing people, especially people wearing clothes. This is really great. Look how loose his pants are. And then again, we're talking about anchor points on this side here, and then we're talking about pinch points over here. And these are actually just kind of stretching across. His pants are so low on his body, right? But so here's the anchor and here's the pinch, and this is all getting pulled over here. Loose fitting clothes is really tricky to draw because it's just there's just so much kind of just flopping around. So you're constantly thinking, where's the anchor? Where's the pinch? Here's the anchor. There's the pinch. Here's the anchor. Here's the pinch. You know, here's the this is like a like a stretched out tube fold. A tube fold is when you have a when you just have a tube, right? But sometimes the tube fold wraps across, and sometimes it gets pinched and pulled. So we've got these kind of tube folds going here. So most of the time, when you, depending on the clothes, like this is really loose, but on suits where they have like a shoulder pad, sometimes this happens where it's just really tight and it just stretches across, and it actually looks flat up here when it really should kind of wrap around, but this is actually accurate. And then again, but you could get away with that because you've got a lot of other elements here indicating the direction of the dimension of the forms here. As long as you have most of the details going in the direction of the form, you could put at least one or two that is going counter when it's natural for it to do that. Again, more of the stretching and the pulling and the anchor points and the wrapping of the clothes around, indicating what the character's dimensions are doing. And you could actually see, like, here's a little soft line of where he thought his arm would be, and then he kind of went and readjusted. This is a really great drawing just because of the dimension. We're looking down, everything is coming down, we've got the perspective of this drawing, and in fact it's actually like this kind of fisheye view where it's coming up and around and wrapping around. So it's just implying the fisheye kind of really high perspective, like this is like a photo, a distorted photo. But here we have these sleeves, they're wrapping around. This detail here shows the wrapping around. So that way, that when he puts this kind of pinch line here, these stretch lines here that are just actually extremely flat, it does not flatten it, because every other detail is actually working toward the dimension of the drawing. And then again, here we have the brachioradialis muscle visibly connecting over here. So this line here comes over and connects to that line here. This line here connects over here to this line here. We've got these lines here showing that the brachioradialis, which is right, let's see if I could get there. See, you can kind of see how it's coming in and around. And it's a beautiful muscle to always draw on your arms when you're drawing arms. So you could see it there, because it gives the arm a lot of dimension when you're drawing arms, stretching, moving, going like that. Like, I mean, it's even that bump. It's that bump that's like it comes straight and then it goes up. That's the brachioradialis. So it's always really nice to show that. And then we have this elbow bone sticking out here, and it's actually a very square looking line here to indicate that it is a bone. And these hands are insanely good. Very simplified but gorgeous hands. I mean, this is a really difficult kind of a drawing to do. And then we've got all the phalanges here. All the phalanges. You got one phalange, two phalange, boom. And then we have the knuckle here, phalange, 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 and we have the knuckles, and then the bones that come out here, and they move across down here, right? And then we could see them. And then he has this line right here to show you that the arm is coming across and then wrapping around, right? Three-dimensional. Then we've got these beautiful drapery. This is like these zigzag kind of folds, but at the same time they're being pulled from this, and so there's like a pinch here, a slight pinch, and then this is where the anchor points are. So the knees are the anchor points, and then they're coming off from here and pinching slightly over here, and then these are just kind of zigzags. Just gorgeous drawing, great attitude too, just a beautiful pose of you could understand his personality. And again, these sort of drawings are very difficult to do when you have no real muscles to she's not buff. Simple body parts that aren't like super idealized muscular bodies are tricky to do, because you still need to make them look like real human body, real human body, without overdoing it. So you could actually see bicep, a deltoid, and then bicep, deltoid, and then very, very, very subtle bicep. And the wrapping around here of dimension of these arms coming toward us. So these lines are wrapping around the arm, and then we've got these beautiful hands and gloves. Beautiful hands and gloves. These are actually, look at my hand. Look, if I do this, let's see, and then you can look at hers. It's the wrong hand, but and then you've got this. She's kind of doing this. Look at my hand and look at this drawing. That's what it looks like. So if you're having trouble with drawing hands, pose it out. There's pretty much no excuse now to draw bad hands, unless you're a really bad observational artist. If you're having trouble with a hand, you take out your phone, you take a picture of your hand in the position you want, and then you just copy drawing the hand. But it would be a good thing to do is to study hand construction, so that when you do copy observational hands, you understand what you're actually looking at. And then this is wrapping around here, all the pinch folds here. And this is interesting because this is very flat. It looks very, very flat. But I think it's in part because we're starting to kind of wrap around a little bit. It's kind of like the shirt is not coming down at us. It's coming down this way. So it's wrapping around her, but it's wrapping around and falling back. So that's the feel that you get, is that it's not quite raising up on the sides. It's coming down on the sides. And then this is one of the few drawings that I've got here that, this is the last one, that has almost no drapery at all. This is actually the tightest costume in all of these drawings that we've got. And one of the few reasons I picked this is because it still shows some sort of anatomy here. We've got all. It's not that he doesn't know how to draw anatomy and he only draws drapery. There is still a knowledge of anatomy in here. All of these lines, very subtle lines, all work in an anatomical way. And again, this is wrapping. We're looking up at her, and it's wrapping away from us, going away from us, and then it's wrapping toward us. And then this is pinch fold, and it's all pinching and wrapping around. So these are tube folds coming around and wrapping around, indicating that this person that we're looking at, we're looking up at them. And even this line, which is a little bit flat, and I think maybe could have been pushed a little bit more so that we're looking underneath it. It still works because every other indication of this drawing says that we're looking up at this figure. So if you only have one that isn't, it doesn't ruin the effect. And see how this I really like this here, how it's boxy, how there's actually like he didn't draw like just a circle, like he didn't just go around and across. He actually went boom boom, And then why did he do that? Is because when you look at this part of the arm here, this upper arm, when you look at it under the light, notice how it comes across, and then there's almost a direct square side plane here. And if you look at the Bridgman, he's straight up just kind of draws a box here and an egg here, right? For this area, this is like an egg, and this is a box. So it's a box, a long flat box connected to like an egg, right? And so like he kind of drew that as here's the box. All right, and so we're back to where we started. So that is Kohei Horikoshi's artwork. I highly recommend taking a look at it for all the drapery that he does, is the personality that he puts into all his art. Okay, so if you're interested in looking at more of Kohei Horikoshi's art, I highly recommend picking up the manga, the My Hero Academia manga. If you haven't already picked it up, if you're not already a fan, and there's very few people who I know who are unaware of this cartoon or manga, but highly recommend you can pick up copies of the manga here. And you get much more of the art. It's much more finished. There is a lot more to this work than what I showed, but it also does have some of the character drawings in here in pencil. Like for example, here we have this drawing here. But a lot of drapery here. A lot of beautiful drawn hands. Like, I mean, the hands in his manga are ridiculous. They're so well drawn. It's a great study on hands, great study on drapery, great study on just good shape design, great expressive characters, very solid drawing. I have a great anatomy, fantastic storytelling. This is just really good to study, just to see how simplified he can make it, his artwork, but at the same time how solid and well drafted his art is. So highly recommend picking up the manga. I will put a link to these works in the description of this video. And that is it from me. Hopefully you learned a little something. Hopefully this will inspire you to take a closer look at this artist's work. And I will talk to you next time. All right.